about the basics of philosophical method, specifically what is known as the Socratic Method. Now, this is something that has a sort of popular image based on its use in law schools, but it's something of a misuse. The idea here is you've got this stern professor at the front who says, okay, U.S. versus Caroline Products Company, 1938. Mr. Jones, give us an accounting case, right? You're suddenly put on the spot. That's not actually the way this develops. What it means in philosophy. What it means is, yes, questioning and so forth, but it's not simply a matter of putting people on the spot and asking them hard factual questions. It's a matter of trying to get people to understand things and asking them questions to bring out their understanding or their lack of understanding. So yes, it's trying to lead someone somewhere, but it's not really just doing this in a way that's designed to sort of bring out information. It's done in order to try to discover the nature of something. And it's something that Socrates develops in ancient Greece, but that really emerges in virtually every philosophical tradition in one form or another, very much like this. Let's start with the question of what philosophy is. We're here to study philosophy, but what is philosophy? It's actually a hard question. Most things are like that. I mean, you take a class on biology. What's it about? Life. Good. Take a class about sociology. What's it about? Society. Take a class about psychology. What's it about? That's the mind, right? But think about a class in philosophy, and it's hard. I remember when I called my grandmother, I told her that I was going to graduate school in our hometown, so I'd be coming back to where I had grown up to study philosophy. And she said, oh, that's nice then. What's philosophy? And that's a hard question to answer. Now, if you look at the word itself, it's maybe not so hard, but in a sense, this answer starts raising more questions than it answers. If you look at the word, it's a combination of philo, which means love, or pursuit, or something like that, together with sophia, wisdom. And so it's the love of wisdom, the pursuit of wisdom. But now what's wisdom? Well, the most common answer, if you look out in the dictionary, is good judgment. So one way of looking at it is philosophy is the love or pursuit of good judgment. But now, that in itself is puzzling. For one thing, the question of what wisdom is itself a hard philosophical question, one we'll talk about at various points throughout this term. But moreover, there's a kind of problem that arises here. How do you do this? Okay, you want to pursue good judgment, but that's sort of hard. How do people get good judgment in general? Well, there's an old joke about this. This is from the Amos and Andy show. Amos once asked the kingfish why he had such good judgment. Well, said the kingfish, good judgment comes from experience. Then where does experience come from? Experience comes from bad judgment. So that's one way to get experience and to get good judgment. Just exercise a lot of bad judgment. Have life beat you up enough, in other words, and maybe you'll become wise. But really, ideally, we'd like not to go through that path of exercising lots of bad judgment and through hard experience attaining good judgment. We'd like to, in some way, get there more directly. So how do we do it? Well, as I mentioned, in basically every philosophical tradition, there's an attempt to try to do this, to try to pass on wisdom in such a way to let people avoid the school of hard knocks, to let them avoid that path of bad judgment leading to experience that forces them into good judgment. Instead, it begins with, well, an attempt, you might say, to get to good judgment more directly. Now, almost always, it begins with a sense of wonder about the world, about its majesty, about its complexity, about the nature of humanity itself, a wonder about the kinds of things we're capable of, both the wonderful things that humanity is capable of and also the really terrible things that we're capable of. And so it begins in wonder at the world, at the things we do, at our nature. But now, it doesn't just stay. I mean, just wonder itself is not philosophy. If it were, this would be easy. You could just say, dude, the world's amazing. Okay. Yeah. I mean, go to various places on West Campus and you will find people engaged in that sort of wonder. Oh. but that's not philosophy. What it really involves is reflecting on that, starting to think about that, not just start sitting there saying, dude, but instead thinking, well, what is so wonderful about it? What am I really? what is the world really made of? How is it possible for us to do these grand things, but also these terrible things? And when we begin to reflect on those questions, we come up with some answers. We don't just say, oh, wow, but instead we say, maybe human beings are like this. Maybe the world is like that. Now, if it were just that way, we would end up at the starting point of a lot of philosophical traditions, where some great thinker comes along. And by the way, it just so happens that in the world, many of these great thinkers, at least as far as we know about them, came about in what Karl Jaspers has called the axial period, roughly the 6th century BC. It was the time of Confucius and Lao Tzu in China, of the Buddha and some important Hindu thinkers in India. It was the time of the earliest Greek philosophers. It's the time when King Josiah began the writing down of the Hebrew scriptures. And so all of these things were happening around the world more or less simultaneously. Now, in those texts themselves, you don't find many arguments. You instead find this kind of wonder and this sort of reflection. And you get articulated a view of the world and a view of humanity. But it's only a little later in these traditions that people begin the third step of philosophy, subjecting those views to critical examination. Somebody lays out a view and says, look at the world this way. Someone else says, well, look at it that way. Maybe we're this kind of being. Maybe the world is like that. And then they begin to argue. They begin to say, well, why should I see it your way rather than that person's way? And it's at that stage that people really engage in the main practice of philosophy, which isn't just a matter of imagining a certain view of the world, but really trying to grasp why we should see the world that way. And so constructing arguments in favor of some of those views of the world or against those views of the world. A lot of philosophy consists, in other words, in formulating these worldviews, but a lot of it also consists in trying to justify them or trying to criticize them. Trying to explain to somebody why you should accept this version of good judgment as opposed to that version of good judgment. Why you should have this conception of wisdom as opposed to that. Now, there are different parts of philosophy. What did I say when Grandma said, so what is philosophy? Did I tell her what I just told you? No, I was put on the spot. I didn't know what to say. And so I made for a kind of crummy answer by talking about the parts of philosophy. Now, that's not the best way of thinking about what philosophy is, but it is an important thing to know if you're going to study philosophy. What do philosophers in fact do? What do they wonder about? What do they subject to critical examination? Where do they actually try to formulate these worldviews? What kinds of questions are they asking? Well, in basically every tradition, there are three different areas that people investigate. Some traditions concentrate much more on one than on the others. But they start often with metaphysics. Metaphysics is the part of philosophy that is about what there is, what the world consists of, what really is fundamental. And so it's questions like this that motivate the metaphysician. What is it? What's the world made of? What kinds of things are there? What's real and what is only apparent? How do we tell appearance from reality? And then finally, about human nature. What am I? What kind of thing am I? Am I a mind? Am I a body? Am I a soul? Am I anything at all? One view we're going to encounter in Buddhism, but also in the West, is the no-self view. There is no you, they will say. And that is historically a powerful view that challenges any other kind of answer to that question of what am I? Maybe in the end I'm not anything at all. But those are basic questions of metaphysics. Who am I? What am I? What does the world consist of? Here's a second area of philosophy, the theory of knowledge, also known as epistemology. How do I know things? What is it to know something anyway? What is knowledge? Can I know anything at all? If so, how? We will encounter the group that I mentioned last time, the skeptics, who say, actually, it's impossible to have knowledge. You can't have knowledge of anything at all. And that's an important question in epistemology. Can we have knowledge? And if so, how do we do it? What is it to have knowledge? How do I know whether I have knowledge? Can I know anything independently of experience through reflection alone? Now, there are lots of things you probably think you know. What's an example of something you would be pretty sure of? You think, yeah, if I know anything, I know this. 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, good. You might think, I have knowledge of that. I know 2 plus 2 is 4. But now we can say, well, where does that knowledge come from? In a sense, the answer is obvious. Hey, my first grade teacher taught me that. You're calling Miss Walters a liar? But that's one, well, you can say, yeah, that's only a part of an answer. How did Miss Walters figure this out, right? How did she know 2 plus 2 is 4? Well, you can begin to ask those questions and try to trace this back. Is it something that ultimately rests on experience? Like, hey, here are 2 fingers, and here are 2 fingers. It's like, 4 fingers. Maybe it's that. Maybe I'm generalizing on the basis of my experience. Or maybe I'm just reflecting on the concepts. And I think of the concept of 2 and the concept of 2 more things, and then I think, I get the concept of 4 things. So maybe it's something I can do independently of experience just by reflecting on the meaning of the terms 2 and 4 and plus and is. And so these are the kinds of questions we're going to address within epistemology. The last part of philosophy, but the one within each tradition we're going to begin with, is ethics. Ethics is the practical part of philosophy. It pertains to action. It has to do with how we live. It's the pursuit of good judgment in the most obvious sense of good judgment. Good judgment about action, about what to do, what kind of person to be, about how to reach decisions. And so the 3 basic questions of ethics are just those. What kind of person should I be? But also, what should I do? And how should I decide? How do I go about making decisions? What are the values that I should be concentrating on? What is the good? What is it for something to be right or wrong? What is it for a person to have a right or a responsibility? Those are basic questions of ethics. So, with every tradition, even though it's not always that the tradition starts with these basic ethical questions, in China, the traditions tend to, certainly Confucius begins with these sorts of questions. But it's not always that way. The earliest Greek philosopher was a man named Thales. And he actually had nothing to say in particular about ethics. According to the story, he was a digger of wells. And he had the following theory. This was his whole philosophy, really. Everything is water. Now you can imagine that this was actually a really good thing for a well digger to believe. You hire him to dig a well. You say, but Thales, how am I sure that if you dig here, you're going to hit water? Relax. Everything is water. Well, anyway, that's my theory of how we came to this view. But it is a certain view within metaphysics about what there is. There's water. Okay? In the end, everything is made out of water, was his thesis. Now, we don't any longer take that thesis very seriously. But it does indicate that in the West, philosophy really begins with that kind of metaphysical reflection. And we'll see in various traditions, it's a different kind of thing that motivates people. Sometimes it's a challenge to knowledge. How do you know anything? Sometimes it's actually a question about the world, what the world is made of. Sometimes it's a question about ethics and what kind of person to be. Well, let's move to Socrates. He's the main subject that we want to examine today. Socrates lived from 470 BC to 399. So he was alive primarily in the 5th century BC. He was a contemporary of Greek playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes, as well as the historians Herodotus and Thucydides. He was, in short, at the beginning of Athens' really, really great stage, the beginning of the flowering of Athenian culture. He didn't himself write anything down, but he did gather a number of disciples around him. He was a popular teacher, and he went around teaching about virtue, and he became famous, really, as a result of one of his students in particular, Plato, who wrote dialogues. And Socrates appears as a character in these dialogues of Plato. Now, most scholars think of Platonic dialogues as divided into 3 parts. There are his early dialogues, where Socrates is really the main figure. And those are thought to be pretty good illustrations, historically, of the kind of thing Socrates did. It doesn't mean those conversations literally took place in anything like our way of, imagining the world with tape recorders and all of that. But instead, they were pretty close to the views of the historical Socrates. Then in the middle period, which we'll examine in this course, Plato more or less uses Socrates to develop his own views. And for the first time there, Socrates starts answering questions. In the early dialogues, he never answers questions, really. He just asks them. He never gives his own view. He simply criticizes the views of others. And then in the later dialogues, Socrates becomes a less important character, and really then it's very clear we're getting the views of Plato, and often objections to the views of the historical Socrates. But in any case, Socrates is really the first person in Western philosophy to advance philosophical arguments, to move beyond that stage of wonder and the formulation of a worldview to the stage of critical examination, to say, wait a minute, is that the right view? Here are some arguments why it might not be. Now, here's the pattern we find in almost all of these early dialogues. This method is known there as dialectic. And the idea is this. Socrates asks what something is. In the dialogue we're primarily going to be looking at in examining his views of virtue. The question becomes, what is courage? And it starts with a more general question, what is virtue? But a variety of these ask about different kinds of virtues or values. So there's one, what is love? Another, what is friendship? What is piety? What is justice is the way that the Republic, a dialogue of the middle period, starts. And so we begin by asking what something is. And often that emerges from a practical problem. People are trying to decide how to educate their children. And they say, look, I want my child not only to be knowledgeable, but to grow up to be a good person. I want to educate them to be virtuous, to actually have good character, as well as to be knowledgeable and successful in society. And so Socrates says, well, if you want to know how to educate somebody to make them virtuous, you better understand what virtue is. What is this state you're aiming for? What are you trying to actually instill in your children? And then they begin to inquire about what virtue, or courage, or love, or friendship, etc., are. Now, what happens here is that Socrates will ask this question, and then somebody comes up with an answer. They say, well, I think friendship is this, or love is this, or courage is this. And then Socrates proceeds to analyze that answer. He analyzes the definition they give. And he finds, well, usually by asking questions that either it's unclear, or it's too narrow, or it's too broad. We'll talk more in a moment about what that means. But then, at that point, people say, okay, yeah, that's not the right definition. Someone proposes another definition. And this process continues. Finally, at the end of the early dialogues, you might think, oh, good, at the end we find out what courage is, or what justice is, or what love is. No, at the end they end up saying, oh, gosh, I guess we don't know what love is, what courage is, what friendship is, and so on. And they all go away discouraged. So I will tell you right now, these early dialogues are in that sense kind of a bummer. They're fun because you get to see Socrates, tearing apart these people's ideas. But in the end, when you're expecting the great answer, so after all that, Socrates, tell me, what is friendship? What is love? What is justice? What is courage? I guess we don't know. And they all leave, okay? Now, periodically, some character leaves earlier than that. They get mad, for example, and storm out, or they just get discouraged and say, yeah, I don't know, I'm not good at this game, I quit. So we'll see that too as we go through some of these dialogues. I'm going to start with something that's not very philosophical at all. Because after all, the question, what is friendship? What is courage? What is love? Those are really hard questions. Let's take something simple. What is a chair? Here's a chair, for example, right? You might think, this thing, yeah, that's a chair. I know that's a chair. This is something that I seem to know, right? I'm confident I know that this thing is a chair. But now we can imagine Socrates saying, oh, you think you know that's a chair, do you? Maybe it's worse. You think, I need a chair for my apartment or dorm room. And Socrates says, oh, you're going to look for a chair? Very good. What is a chair? And now you think, okay, what is a chair? Now, on the one hand, if somebody says to me, at least, do you know what a chair is? I say, sure. But now Socrates says, really? Are you convinced that you know what a chair is? How many of you think you know what a chair is? Okay, most of you, though I've not corrected enough of you. Something tricky is coming, right? Okay, so something tricky is coming. Socrates says, well, all right, you think you know this is a chair, that I'm now sitting in a chair. What is a chair? Can anybody give me a definition of a chair? Yeah?
Something that was made with the intention to be sat in.
Something that was made with the intention to be sat on. Okay. So, this chair was indeed made with the intention that people would sit on it. Is that a good definition of a chair? Some of you say no. Why not? Yeah. Ooh, she says, what about a saddle? A saddle on a horse is something that's made to be sat on. But a saddle isn't a chair. It'd be odd to say, chair off that horse. Actually, this reminds me of well, for certain purposes, my favorite biblical verse. You have to go back to the King James translation for this. Saddle me the ass, he said to his sons, and they saddled him. But anyway, so yes, a saddle is something designed to be sat upon, but it's not a chair. Other reasons why this might not be a great definition of a chair. Yeah?
Someone's intention in making the chair isn't necessarily relevant to what the chair is.
Ooh, that's true. This makes the person's intention crucial, right? So you say to a 4-year-old, make me a chair, little Susie. And she starts putting together some Play-Doh and some sticks and a little bit of sand from over here. Finally says, ciao, have a seat. That doesn't look like a chair. She intended it to be a chair that you could sit on, but maybe it's a pretty bad chair and you try to sit on it and you fall over and bad things happen. So in short, yeah, the person's intention isn't enough. That's something that may or may not be realized, right? Somebody might intend to make a chair and successfully do it, but they might also fail to do it. Can you think of other reasons why that definition of something someone designed to be sat upon isn't great? Yeah?
It's too broad of a definition.
It is too broad. What are some things besides saddles that it includes that it shouldn't include?
A bench.
A bench, okay, good. People design benches so that people will sit on them. But is a bench a chair? No. What are some other things designed to be sat upon? Yeah.
One of those rugs that like turn or sit on, squares.
Oh, yeah, the rugs with the square. My daughter is an elementary music teacher, and so it was a big deal to get one of these rugs that has all these little things where the students can sit. And they get to sit, since she's a music teacher, on musical notes and things like that. So it's like, oh, I'm sitting on A. But yeah, I mean, that rug is designed to be sat upon, and yet that rug isn't a chair. Yeah?
There are things that are intended to be sat upon and sit on.
Oh, okay. What about things that aren't really designed to be sat upon, but nevertheless you would be willing to call a chair? Now, I can sit on this table. It's not designed to be sat upon, but I'm sitting on it. Does that make it a chair? No, by itself it doesn't seem to me it makes it a chair. However, we could say, are there things like that weren't designed with the idea that someone would sit on them, but turn out to be places where people sit, and we say, yeah, that's a chair. Yeah?
The tree stump maybe, like you're a campfire. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, okay, good. There are a bunch of rocks around a campfire, let's say, and people sit on the rocks. You might say, whoa, that rock is a really nice one to sit on. That's like a natural chair. Okay? Nobody designed it that way. It just eroded in the right way so it's a comfy place to sit. People might even say, oh, that's the king's chair, because it's the nicest rock to sit on around the campfire, something like that. Now that sounds a little bit silly, but actually, for other things, we do that sort of thing all the time. For example, at Sun County in New Mexico, there is this wonderful slide. My kids, when we visited there, called it the Super Fun Happy Slide. And nobody designed it, nobody made it. It partly is worn through the paths of Pueblo Indians who used to live there, and partly it's just a matter of natural erosion. But it created this sort of dual slide. You put one foot in each slide, you sit down and go whee down the hill. And it's sort of awesome. It's a slide, but nobody designed it to be slid down. It just happened that way. And so, yeah, intention, you might think, is both not necessary and also isn't enough. Somebody's got to intend and also succeed, but then it's more specific than that because of benches and sofas and all sorts of other things like that. And now, the computer got bored with our discussion of that question. So wake up, little computer. Yeah, what is it do? Okay. So, if we try to define it, here's the kind of thing that's going on. Let's call that circle, the things that satisfy our definition. So we have, let's say, chairs being the things in that blue circle. And then ideally, we want to come up with another circle, let's say this green circle, and we want it to capture those things exactly. If we get it right, that definition will pick out all and only chairs. Those two circles will overlap completely. Everything that satisfies our definition will be a a chair, everything that is a chair will satisfy our definition. So it'll be exactly the same set of objects. Now what we've seen is that this first attempt, hey, it's something that people designed to be sat upon, doesn't quite get it right. The things don't match up exactly, and that often happens. So we have the things that really are chairs here in the blue circle, but then we have the things that satisfy our definition, something designed to be sat upon, that's the green circle, and they only partially overlap. This was designed to be sat upon, it is a chair. So there are lots of things in the intersection of those circles. They're in both. But there are also things that are chairs that are not covered by that definition, and those things are false negatives, you might say. Our definition says those shouldn't be chairs, but they are. So it's a false negative. And then there are the things that are false positives, things that do satisfy our definition, but actually aren't chairs. Things like benches and saddles. Those are false positives. And maybe a natural chair by a campfire, that would count as a false negative. So that's the general structure we're going to find, not only with this definition, but later with definitions of knowledge. We're going to come back to the same picture when we try to define what an essential property might be, what makes something good, what makes something right, and so on and so forth. Frequently in the class, we're going to come back to a certain definition or theory, and we're going to say, does it get it right? Or are there false negatives, are there false positives? Now we can also talk about things being too narrow and too broad. The definition is too narrow if it leaves out some things, if in other words there are false negatives. And it's too broad if it includes too much, if there are false positives. And so what we want is something that is neither too narrow nor too broad. Now one disadvantage of that narrow and broad talk is that it's quite clear there can be both false negatives and false positives. Something can be too narrow and too broad at once. And that sounds a little weird when you put it that way. But when you realize it just means there's only a partial overlap here. There are things in each circle that aren't in the other. Then it becomes obvious, oh yeah, that's going to be very frequently the case. Well, let's go back to our question about what is a chair. We've looked at one definition. Any other definitions you'd like to try out? Yeah? Well, it is true. The head of an organization is referred to as the chair of that organization. For 10 years, I was chair of the philosophy department. On the other hand, I wasn't designed to be sat upon, so I did, well, never mind that. But, you know, you might say, yeah, that's a sort of metaphorical use. And that does happen with a lot of words. We've got to be careful about that kind of thing, because actually a lot of terms have their literal sort of meaning, and then have various extensions of their meaning based upon that. And chairman, chairwoman, just chair, all of that kind of thing. Chair a meeting, that's a verb. All of that is in some way, I guess, related to this, but it's not obvious in a lot of cases what the relation is. So if I said, what is it to be the chair of an organization, that would feel like a very different sort of question. So admittedly, we're going to have to pay attention to things like that too. For example, if you ask the question, what is love? You might think, well, wait, there are a lot of different senses of love. I love my wife. I love my children. I also love the Blacklist on TV, but in a very different sense, okay? And so we might think, yeah, you know, love is one of those terms that can be used in all sorts of different ways. We've got to be sure what sense of love we're after in order to come up with a good definition. So let's go back to this sort of literal meaning of chair, just where it means this type of thing, where this is an example of it. Any other definitions besides something designed to be sat upon? You mean you don't know what chair is? Yes.
I don't have a definition, but I will say that I just want to make sure our definition also includes like a chair in a meeting. Because that wouldn't be a chair.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. What about chairs in paintings? That's a. You say, whoa, look, that's a chair that Whisper's mother is sitting in. And then you might think, oh, yeah, but I'm not going to sit in that, right? Or on that. I mean, it's in a painting. Whisper's mother can sit on that chair because she's just in a painting. So you're right, with a lot of things, we're going to get representations of that thing. As Plato will end up saying, we've got images of the thing, we've got representations of it. We often refer to that as the thing itself. And so that's going to be tricky. If we start out by thinking, oh, we better include things like three-dimensional. And what about my imaginary chair? Right now, I'm imagining my favorite chair of all time. Oh, that chair was sweet. It was really big and fluffy and tilted back, and a cat would get on my lap or on my chest when I sat in that chair and tilted back. And I would fall asleep, and the cat would fall asleep. And I would miss appointments. It was wonderful. I really miss that chair. But you might think, well, what happened to it? Cat tore it up. But anyway, what is a chair? Come back to that question. And again, think, yeah, forget paintings, forget images and things in imagination and so on. Let's just think about physical chairs. Can we come up with a definition of that? And then maybe we can figure out something to say on the images and the representations and the imagination based on that. Yeah?
So I'm pretty sure this can get shut down, but the chair is that it has to have the durable foundation that is standing. Something like if the chair is broken, you can actually be a chair.
All right, he's asking a good question. If a chair is broken, is it still a chair? Suppose the chair is broken enough so that if you sit on it, it falls apart. Actually, I have a chair like this. I've tried several times to fix it, and I can't fix it. And it's the captain's chair, the one with the arms that sits at the head of the back of the table. One year, my father-in-law was visiting for Thanksgiving, and we needed extra chairs, and so he put out that chair, which meant at Thanksgiving dinner, my wife said, here's the turkey, would you like to carve it? I said, yes, I would. I sat down and suddenly, down on the floor. She ended up carving the turkey while I recovered my dignity. But that was a case of, well, it wasn't a chair. It was intended to be sat upon, but it was not something you could in fact sit upon and it would fall apart. Was it still a chair? I guess I'm inclined to think it was a chair. It was just a bad chair because it would fall apart. But that gets us into some tricky questions. And when we look at Lao Tzu, his Taoist theory, he's going to say there is an intimate connection between what a chair is and what a good chair is. And so if we really understand what a chair is, we'll know what it's supposed to do, and that will tell us automatically what a good chair is. So, although it's not exactly the case that every chair is a good chair, he doesn't identify them, still he'll say it's part of the same answer. We know there's something wrong with that chair if we know what a chair is, because we'll know it's supposed to be the kind of thing you can sit in, and in that case you couldn't. So he would say, doesn't mean it's not a chair, but it would mean it's a bad chair. Well, any other positive attempts at a definition? Yeah.
A four-legged structure designed to seat a single individual.
Ooh, a four-legged structure designed to seat one individual. Now, there are several sophisticated moves you're making there. One is four legs, right? He's added that. Another for one person to sit on, but he's kept the intention. He's kept the design part. Okay, so it's something designed for one person to sit on that has four legs. How is that as a definition? Yeah.
The first thing that comes to my mind is like a rolling desk chair.
Like a rolling desk chair. Oh, okay. Yeah, what about this leg business? Yeah, if you actually look up chair in a dictionary, it will typically say something like this: a piece of furniture with four legs and a back. And that leaves out the intention part of what you're saying. It does add in the back part, but it does bring this four-leg business again. So, sure. Okay. So I'm going to actually talk about that for a minute because it's on the slides, but your part, although it leaves out the back part, does include the intention too. So it's a more complex definition than what we're going to do, but we'll take this part and then add the intention in. So you might say, look, sometimes people say that a chair, oh, it's a kind of furniture. But that's a kind of crummy definition. What kind of furniture? That's unclear. So suppose we take, for the moment, that definition from the dictionary, leaving aside the intended for one person to sit on, and just say a piece of furniture with four legs and a back. Now that'll be a little easier to analyze, and then your counterexample applies to this part of that more complex definition. After all, do all chairs have four legs? Here's an interesting question right now. You're sitting on something. What is it? Is it a chair? How many of you would say you're sitting in a chair right now? How many of you would say, no, this is something else, it's not a chair? Okay, interesting. It's like 90% of you think what you're sitting in is a chair. Does it have four legs? No. So that's a already bad. Now, he can say, hey, no problem, that's not a chair, you're sitting in a seat. But you know the difference between a seat and a chair? You know, you get a seat in a movie theater, you don't get a chair in a movie theater, and so on. So anyway, I mean, it's hard to say whether this kind of thing should count as a chair exactly. But you might think, wait a minute, 4 legs and a back. Do all chairs have 4 legs? And you might think, no, some roll around, for example, and they don't have 4 legs. Here are some other sorts of things that are false positives for that definition. That thing. That's a sort of 19th century piece of furniture. What is that? Yeah, sort of a chaise lounge or a divan or something like it. Whatever it is, it's not a chair, right? And yet, actually, it does have 4 legs, and it is designed for one person to sit on, lounge on, actually. But you're supposed to be a woman in a long dress. You know, at least from the photographs and paintings of the Arabs. Anyway, that's something that is not a chair. Or this. This is designed for more than one person to sit on, so the one person part can get rid of just the sofa. But it does notice have 4 legs and a back, so it does count as a false positive with respect to the dictionary definition. It implies that one person part is pretty important. Here's another one, 4 legs and a back, but gosh. Now again, looks like it's designed for more than one person, but what about a little bench? Is it a chair? Maybe it is. Yeah.
Would you say that our definitions of the chair are all subjective to the person?
Oh, now all right, good. He's taking a subjectivist line. He says, you know, in the end, we all just have different ideas of chair. And so you have your idea of chair, and I have my idea of chair. And so I look at that, I say, that's not a chair, that's a bench. And you say, hey, come on, man, it's a chair. When I use a chair, it's a chair, right? I'm sitting in a chair right now. And you say, no, it's a seat. No, I say, it's a chair, man. And whatever you want. So it's like, well, all right. Presumably, there are 2 things that are going to be issues here, at least. One is, if you get to decide what a chair is according to you, and you use the word that way, then how do we ever communicate? Right? You say, wow, I'm going out to look for a chair this weekend. And I think, I know what that would mean given what I'm in my chair. But maybe you're referring to the fact that Twin Liquors is having their dollar sale this weekend, and you call chairs bottles of whiskey. Or rather, call bottles of whiskey chairs. Well, maybe, so I can. Yeah, I think I would go out and get a chair tonight and consume it all. That's something that, you know, gosh, it's going to make it hard for us to talk to one another. Also, it's very strange and hard to see how we can have these discussions at all. Somebody says, what is a chair? And, you know, can you really say anything at once? Or anything you want. It's like Alice in Wonderland, where words just can mean whatever you want them to mean. And that seems pretty dangerous. So anyway, that is one possibility. You could say, and by the way, sociologically, it's not a crazy thought. It turns out people have different ideas of chair. And when we ask people about some of the hard cases, they do disagree, which tells us actually people do differ about this. And you might say, yeah, that's all we can say. Some people think these are chairs, some people think these are chairs. There's a large overlap, which lets us communicate, but it's not the same thing. And really, that might be what we're stuck with. We get by in communication only because there's a big enough overlap. Now, there's another possibility. Suppose we add in his thing and say, all right, 4 legs and a back for one person to sit on. Now we do have a pretty solid definition that gets rid of some things. It doesn't get rid of our 19th century demand there, but it does get rid of the ordinary sofas and benches and things like that. So can you think of other problems that might arise for this definition? Yeah?
If it's for one person to sit on and multiple people sit on it, does that make it not a chair?
Ooh, what if it's, yeah, what do we mean exactly for one person to sit on? What about something that actually multiple people can sit on, even though it's meant for one person? I mean, this is meant for one person, but 2 people could share it, right? You can each sit on that. I once was at the American Philosophical Association meetings in St. Louis, and we went to this Italian restaurant, this big group of us, and somebody there said something you never say in a restaurant unless you're fabulously lucky, which is, oh, we're not going to order from the menu. Just have the chef bring us whatever he thinks is best. Okay, this is a recipe for spending a huge amount of money. And what happened is all of us in the group managed to finally pull together enough cash to pay the bill, but we had nothing left over. And so it's like, how do we get back to the hotel? We're in a completely different part of St. Louis. And it's far away, we can't walk. And one guy said, well, it's no problem, I drove. I've got a car. So we said, yeah, he's got a car. And it was like a 1973 VW Beetle. And we fit 7 people in it. It was not designed for the front seat to have like 3 people sitting on it, but we did it. And I mean just the passenger seat, you know. We had several people just lying across the front back seat, but we managed to get back to the hotel. Well, anyway, yeah, here are some things that might make you worry. What is that? It's a stool, most of us would say. So here it's a chair. It has 4 legs and a back. It's designed for one person to sit on, so it's a chair. You say it's a stool, nonsense, it's a chair. But most of us would say that's a stool. What about that? Ooh, is that a chair? It's a hanging chair, right? And again, it has no legs at all. It does have a back. It is designed for one person to sit on. What about this? That's a chair, but it just has this one leg and it's sort of pod-like. What about that? That's a chair, but it doesn't have 4 legs. What about that? I don't know what that has a leg. It doesn't really have a leg, it just has a face, right? What about that? That's a chair. It has a back designed for one person to sit on. That. Well, you get the idea. And you can also see that I had a lot of fun with Google image search. There are only 3 legs and sort of a back. Ooh, what about that? A colleague of mine has that as his desk chair. But that doesn't have a back. It doesn't have 4 legs. In fact, I guess, I don't think he sits on it. I mean, he kneels on that chair, right? And yet people do refer to that kind of thing as a chair. Or that. Or that. Or that. That's really disturbing. Or, quick, definition killer for chairs, a beanbag chair. It doesn't have any legs, it doesn't have a back. And actually more than one person could sit on it. But nevertheless, we call it a beanbag chair, right? We don't just call it the big blob. It's actually a beanbag chair, so wow. Anyway, it's very hard to come up with a definition of chair that satisfies all these various constraints that actually give us all and only chairs. Almost everything we can think of ends up having some false positives and some false negatives. And while I was at it, I couldn't resist a few more. That's a chair at the desk, right? But it's not really designed for anybody to sit on. Or that one. Or that thing outside the museum. I think it's in Spain. Well, anyway, you get the idea. So, what's the point of all this? After all, Socrates does not go around challenging people about their knowledge of chairs. So what does he do? Well, he ends up being put to death for what he's doing. So it ends up being a pretty serious thing. Now you might think, gosh, we've just spent like a half an hour talking about what the chair is, so I can understand this wanting to kill somebody thing. But that does happen. He was accused of undermining belief in the Athenian gods and corrupting the youth of Athens. And so he was put on trial, and in the end, he was executed. His defense and his explanation of the Socratic Method is in a Platonic dialogue called the Apology. The Apology, which is basically an account of his trial, where he gets to get up and give his speech in defense of what he's been doing. Now, in the Apology, he explains it this way. He says, I sought to persuade every one of you to look to himself and seek virtue and wisdom before he looks to his private interests, and look to the state before he looks to the interests of the state, and that this should be the order which he observes in all his actions. In other words, seek virtue, seek wisdom. Don't look out just for your own self-interest. What's best for you? Think about what's best, period. What's the right thing to do? Think about what is the wise thing to do. Think about what it is to do the right thing and be the right kind of person, above thinking, ooh, I can gain this kind of advantage. Now, he does make an important assumption. He thinks that in order to be virtuous, you have to know what virtue is. You have to know what you're trying to attain. At least you have to engage in dialectic to find out. You might not at the end be able to say, yes, I want to be a good person, and this is exactly what a good person is. But that's what you're striving for. You are at least inquiring to try to know what it is to be a good person, what it is to lead a good human life. You've got to at least be examining yourself to try to understand what a good person would be like, and then trying to be them. So, he was in the end convicted. The prosecution proposed the death penalty. And Socrates, the way the system worked out, to propose an alternative punishment. People thought he was going to propose exile. They just wanted him out of Athens. Yeah, go somewhere else. Go bother with Spartans. Go bother with somebody else, However, he said, well, look, that's not right. He said, what should be done to somebody like me? Some good thing, because I've been doing a good thing for you. Okay? If I get what I deserve, it should be some very good thing. What reward would be suitable for me? And so he says in the end, a free lunch. There can be no more fitting reward than free meals in the Proscenium. That's where the Olympic athletes who had won medals were feasted. He says, I should be feasted like an Olympic gold medal winner. I should be viewed as, the Katie Ledecky of Athens. Well, suppose you're in the jury, and there were hundreds of people in this jury, and you find the one side who just convicted him of this capital crime, right? And then he says, well, I propose the following alternative, to be, rewarded like an Olympic athlete and given free meals for life. How does that make you feel, member of the jury? It pisses you off. And so lots of people, if you look at the numbers, lots of people who voted to find him innocent then voted for the death penalty because they thought that was ridiculous. In any event, that's what happened. They ended up voting overwhelmingly for the death penalty. But here's what he said I'm trying to do. He says, the Olympic athlete gives you only the appearance of happiness. I give you the reality. I'm trying to get you to think about what virtue is every day. And so I'm the one who's in fact giving you the ability to be happy. And so let me jump ahead. He says, the greatest thing a man can do is converse about virtue every day. And here is the most famous Socratic quote. A motto, of course, the unexamined life is not worth living. Why? Because if you don't examine this and ask what virtue is and how you ought to live, at best, you'll be getting it right by accident. You've got to try to actually think through what virtue is, what it is to be a good person, if you're to end up leading a good life.